It was just another busy night at the bustling restaurant, but for Denise Carter, everything changed the moment she spotted him, the man she had admired her entire life. Michael Jordan, sitting at a corner booth, casually sipping his drink, as if the world didn't revolve around him. But to Denise, he was more than just a basketball legend. He was a symbol of everything she aspired to be: fearless, determined, and larger than life. The weight of the moment hit her like a tidal wave. She was about to meet the man who had shaped her childhood, the man who had been a constant companion to her father during their quiet evenings together. Her hands trembled as she walked toward his table, balancing a tray of food. Her heart raced, but she kept her smile in place. There, in front of her, was her hero, Michael Jordan. She couldn't stop herself. Without thinking, she blurted out the words that had been swirling in her head all night. "You're my hero. Would you mind signing this for me?" The napkin she pulled from her apron was shaking in her hands, but her voice, though nervous, carried the weight of a dream that was too big to be contained. What happened next, though, was something she could never have imagined. In that moment, a simple request for an autograph would spark a series of events that would change her life forever. Would it lead to an unforgettable encounter with Michael Jordan, or would it cost her everything she had worked for? You'll want to keep reading to find out what happened next, because the story that unfolds is nothing short of shocking. The incident, a moment of harsh reality. The words were barely out of Denise's mouth when the storm hit. Her manager Brian stormed toward the table with the fury of a thundercloud, his face a mask of anger and disbelief. The bustling restaurant, once filled with the low hum of conversations and clinking dishes, fell into a sudden, suffocating silence. All eyes turned as he barked, "Denise! What are you doing?" Her heart dropped into her stomach, her hand still holding the napkin in front of Michael Jordan, the inked pen ready for his signature. For a moment the world seemed to stop around her. What had she done wrong? She had only asked for an autograph, a simple gesture of admiration, a tribute to the man who had inspired her as a child. Brian's voice was harsh, cutting through the stillness like a blade. "You don't act like this here. You don't bother the guests, especially not him." The words stung, though she couldn't fathom why something so innocent, so human, could be so wrong. Michael Jordan, sensing the tension, raised an eyebrow but remained calm, his hand still holding the pen in midair. "It's okay," he said, his voice steady, his eyes warm. But it wasn't enough. Brian wasn't listening, his face flushed red with anger as he turned to her, his voice growing louder and more venomous. "Get to the back office, now!" Denise's legs felt like they were made of lead as she followed him toward the back of the restaurant, her breath shallow, her mind racing in disbelief. It wasn't just the sudden humiliation that she couldn't understand. It was the unfairness of it all. She hadn't done anything wrong. She hadn't interrupted his meal, hadn't asked for anything unreasonable. She had simply wanted to connect with someone who had meant so much to her for so many years. As the door to the back office slammed behind her, Denise felt the weight of it all crash down on her. The fear, the embarrassment, the confusion. Brian's voice boomed as he paced in front of her, but all she could hear was the thundering in her ears. "You're fired," he said, the finality of it sinking deep into her chest. "I don't tolerate this kind of behavior. Get your things. You're done here." Denise stood frozen, the world spinning around her. Fired? For asking for an autograph? The absurdity of it all took her breath away. This wasn't just about losing a job. This was about being cast aside, humiliated for something that had felt so pure, so genuine. The weight of Brian's words, "You're done here," felt like they would crush her. As she gathered her things in a haze of confusion and shock, the memories of her father's voice, of their shared love for basketball and Michael Jordan, seemed to echo louder than ever. How had it all gone so wrong, so quickly? Outside, the night air felt heavy, suffocating, as Denise walked to her car. She could hear the sounds of the city around her, but none of it mattered. The neon lights outside flickered mockingly, the world seeming to move. The tears came then, quiet, slow, and uncontrollable. She sat behind the wheel, staring at the neon lights through blurred vision. What had she done wrong? What now? The uncertainty loomed large, and for the first time in a long time, Denise wondered if everything she had worked for had been for nothing. Would her dreams of something bigger, something more meaningful, slip through her fingers because of one harmless question? She didn't know the answers, but what she did know was this. She had just crossed a line she couldn't uncross, and she was about to learn the true cost of following her heart. The unexpected call, a turning point. The next morning arrived, not with relief, but with the heavy weight of a world that had tilted off its axis. Denise woke to the harsh light of the sun streaming through her bedroom blinds, the soft hum of the city outside somehow muted in the wake of last night's events. The silence felt suffocating, as though the world was holding its breath, waiting for her to take the next step. But how could she? How could she move forward when everything she had worked for, everything she had dreamed of, seemed to have vanished in the blink of an eye? Sitting at the kitchen table, Denise stared blankly at her phone. She had been through this cycle before, scrolling through endless job listings, applying with little hope, hoping for some breakthrough, some change. The jobs all seemed to blend together, their descriptions too familiar, too distant from what she had envisioned for her life. She had tried to make sense of the events that had unfolded last night, but it felt impossible. The humiliation of being fired for a simple request, the cold words from her manager, and the indifference of her coworkers, it was all too much to bear. The weight of disappointment pressed heavily on her chest as she took a sip of lukewarm coffee. Her mind wandered back to the moment at the restaurant, the excitement of seeing Michael Jordan in person, the sudden, unexplainable desire to reach out and connect with him, to ask for something so simple, so human. But then the storm had come, the fury of her manager, the cold dismissal of her request, and the swift, harsh punishment that followed. It all seemed so senseless. Why had it gone so wrong, she wondered, the tears from the night before still lingering in the corners of her eyes. Denise glanced at her phone again, almost absent-mindedly, scrolling past job ads, ignoring the numb ache in her heart. She was so wrapped up in her thoughts that she nearly missed the vibration of a call. It was an unknown number, but something about it felt different. A small voice in her head told her to pick it up, to at least answer and see who it was. With a sigh, she reached for the phone, pressing it to her ear. "Hello?" Her voice came out quieter than she intended, a mix of curiosity and exhaustion. "Is this Denise Carter?" The voice was deep, calm, and instantly recognizable. Denise's heart skipped a beat. That voice. She had heard it 1,000 times, on the basketball court, during interviews, and in documentaries. She couldn't be hearing this right. "Yes," she responded, her voice shaky. "Who's this?" There was a brief pause, and then the words hit her like a tidal wave. "This is Michael Jordan." Denise's breath caught in her throat. What? Her mind scrambled, trying to process the gravity of what she had just heard. Michael Jordan, the man she had idolized her entire life, the man who had been a source of inspiration and strength in her darkest moments. Michael Jordan was on the phone with her. She tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. How could this be real? What was happening? "I'm sorry," she stammered, the disbelief lacing her voice. "Can you repeat that?" I said, "This is Michael Jordan. I believe we met last night," he said, his tone calm and matter-of-fact, yet laced with a quiet kindness that struck Denise deeply. "I heard about what happened after I left, and honestly, it didn't sit right with me. The way your manager treated you, it wasn't right." Denise could feel her hands beginning to tremble as she held the phone to her ear. Was this really happening? Was Michael Jordan actually reaching out to her over something as small as an autograph request? Her mind raced with questions, too many to process. Why would he care? She had only been a waitress, a small part of his vast world. Why would he take the time to call her, to care about what had happened? "I wanted to call and say that I'm sorry about what happened," Michael continued, his voice soft but firm. "Your manager's reaction wasn't necessary. You didn't deserve to be treated that way, and I'd like to meet with you. Let's talk. How about lunch tomorrow?" Denise's head spun. The world around her seemed to blur as the weight of his words sank in. Lunch? With Michael Jordan? The idea felt surreal, like a dream she had never dared to have. Why would someone like him want to meet with her? She was just a waitress, a woman struggling to figure out her next step in life. What could someone as accomplished as Michael Jordan possibly see in her? But then, the more she thought about it, the more the idea of meeting him felt like the break she hadn't realized she needed. She blinked, trying to focus as she struggled to find her voice again. "Lunch?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, tomorrow at noon. I know a place on Fairfax. I'd like to talk, Denise. I think you deserve a chance to hear me out." Denise's heart was pounding in her chest. She didn't know what to say. She had imagined meeting her hero 1,000 times, but never like this. Never in a million years had she thought a simple, innocent request for an autograph would lead to a phone call from the man himself. "I'll be there," she said, her voice filled with a strange mixture of awe and determination. The call ended abruptly, leaving Denise in a stunned silence. She held the phone in her hand, still trying to wrap her mind around the fact that Michael Jordan had reached out to her. Why, she kept asking herself. What had she done to deserve this moment? Was this the universe's way of righting the wrong that had happened the night before? For the first time since she had been fired, Denise felt a glimmer of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel for a long time: hope. Maybe this wasn't the end of her story. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something she couldn't have imagined. Michael Jordan had seen her, heard her, and in doing so had given her something far more valuable than an autograph. He had given her a chance to start over, to prove that her dreams were worth fighting for. As she prepared for the lunch meeting the next day, Denise couldn't help but feel a shift inside her. The world, which had seemed so dark just hours before, suddenly felt full of possibility. It wasn't about the meeting itself. It was about what it represented: the chance to rise from the ashes, to find her strength again, and to finally believe that she had the power to change her own narrative. For the first time in a long while, Denise felt ready to embrace whatever the future held. The meeting, a conversation that changes everything. The next day, Denise found herself pacing in front of the cafe, her nerves a whirlwind of uncertainty and anticipation. She had been through countless jobs, faced rejection, and endured hardships she never thought she would survive. But today was different. Today, she was about to meet Michael Jordan. The Michael Jordan. A man whose name had been synonymous with greatness, hard work, and perseverance for as long as she could remember. A man who had, without knowing it, shaped so much of her own story. Her heart raced as she glanced at the clock. It was nearly noon. She had arrived early, hoping to calm her nerves, but the weight of what was about to happen felt overwhelming. The thought that someone like him, someone whose presence could command arenas and inspire millions, was waiting for her felt unreal. A waitress from a small town in Mississippi, sitting across from the living legend who had inspired her since childhood. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside the cafe. The cozy, quiet atmosphere felt almost like a dream, a stark contrast to the chaos of her thoughts. Her eyes scanned the room, and then she saw him. There, at a corner table, sat Michael Jordan, casual, approachable, and completely at ease. He looked up as she approached, and his warm smile immediately put her at ease. "Denise," he greeted her, standing up and extending his hand for a handshake. "Thank you for coming." Denise stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing. She had spent countless hours imagining what this moment would be like, but now that it was here, all she could do was offer a nervous smile in return. "Thank you for inviting me," she managed to say, her voice steadying despite the butterflies in her stomach. They both sat down, and Michael motioned for her to order whatever she liked. The simple gesture, the kindness in his tone, somehow made the moment feel less surreal. They were just two people sitting down for a meal, right? It was hard to believe, but it was happening. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Denise realized that, despite everything that had led her here, she was exactly where she needed to be. As they waited for their food, Michael leaned back in his chair, his eyes studying her with a quiet intensity that made Denise feel as though he was seeing her not just as a waitress or a fan, but as a person, as a woman who had a story to tell. It wasn't the kind of gaze that made her feel small. It was the kind of gaze that made her feel seen, understood. "So, tell me about yourself," Michael said, his voice calm and inviting. "Not just about the restaurant. Who is Denise Carter?" The question hung in the air, and Denise hesitated. She wasn't used to being asked such an open-ended question. She had spent so much of her life playing roles for others, waitress, daughter, friend, that she had never really taken the time to answer this question for herself. Who was she, beyond the titles that had been given to her? She shifted in her seat, unsure of how to answer. Well, she began slowly, I guess I'm just a regular girl. I grew up in a small town in Mississippi. My dad and I used to watch your games together. That's part of the reason I came to LA, to chase something bigger, something more than what my small town could offer. Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful, his eyes never leaving hers. I get that. We all have something inside us that we're trying to reach for. His words felt like a bridge, a connection. Denise had heard these kinds of things before, but coming from him, they felt different. It was as though the struggle for something bigger wasn't just a story, it was a shared experience. Denise chuckled softly, feeling the weight of his words settle into her chest. I thought the restaurant would be temporary, just a way to pay the bills while I figured out what I really wanted to do, she continued. I've always loved stories, but life happens and here I am. Michael's gaze softened, and for the first time, Denise felt like her story wasn't just something to be dismissed or brushed aside. It mattered. The choices she made, the dreams she chased, the setbacks she faced, they mattered. You know, Michael said, leaning forward slightly, life has a way of doing that, but it sounds like you've got something that a lot of people don't have. It's not just talent or connections, it's grit, and you've got it. Denise blinked, taken aback. Grit? She hadn't expected those words from him. She had spent so much of her life feeling like she was just going through the motions, trying to make it from one day to the next. But here was Michael Jordan, the epitome of success, telling her that the very thing she had always thought of as just survival, grit, was exactly what set her apart. Grit? She repeated, a small laugh escaping her lips. I don't know if I have grit. I've just been trying to get by. Michael smiled, his eyes gleaming with a wisdom that could only come from someone who had faced the highest highs and the lowest lows. It's not about getting by, he said. It's about not giving up when everything seems stacked against you. You didn't let a little embarrassment stop you. You still asked for that autograph. Most people wouldn't have done that. That's what tells me you've got heart. You don't let the world tell you who you are. Denise felt a lump form in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Not her manager, not her family, not even her closest friends. They saw her struggle, but they didn't see the fire inside her, the drive to keep moving forward, even when it felt like the world was closing in around her. You know, Michael continued, I've seen a lot of people come and go in this business, but the ones who stand out, the ones who make it, are the ones who refuse to quit. You've got that. You've got the potential to go places. Denise sat in stunned silence for a moment, letting his words sink in. Potential? She had never thought of herself in those terms. All she had ever known was the struggle, the endless cycle of working hard, trying to make ends meet, and feeling like she was always one step behind. But here was Michael Jordan telling her she had something more, something that could take her further than she had ever dreamed. You know, he said, breaking her thoughts, I've got a little project coming up, nothing big, just an independent film I'm producing, but I think it could be something special, and I think you could be a part of it. Denise's heart raced. A project? With Michael Jordan? I'm not offering you a role in the movie, Michael clarified, seeing the surprise on her face, but I am offering you a chance to work behind the scenes. We need someone to assist the script supervisor, keeping track of continuity, scene changes, dialogue. It's not glamorous work, but you'll learn a lot, and I think you've got what it takes. For a moment, Denise couldn't speak. The enormity of the offer felt surreal. She had come to this meeting expecting nothing more than some words of encouragement, maybe even a brief apology from Michael Jordan. But here he was, offering her a chance to step into the very world she had dreamed about. A world of storytelling, of creating something meaningful. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice full of awe. This is more than I ever imagined. Michael smiled. Say yes, because I believe in you, Denise. I see something in you, and I think this is just the beginning. Denise couldn't believe it. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for, the one she never thought she would get. It wasn't just a chance to work in the film industry. It was a chance to prove to herself that she was more than just a waitress, more than just the girl from Mississippi who had never quite made it. Yes, she said, her voice steady now, filled with determination. "I'll do it. I'll take the chance." Michael's smile widened and he nodded. "Good. You start next week. Someone from the production team will reach out with the details. I know you're going to do great things." As the lunch came to a close, Denise stood up, her heart lighter than it had been in days. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was heading in the right direction, like her story was finally starting to make sense. And as she walked out of the cafe, a new sense of purpose filled her chest. Michael Jordan had just given her more than an opportunity. He had given her the belief that she was capable of so much more than she had ever dared to dream. Michael's offer, a leap into the unknown. The next few days blurred by in a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Denise couldn't escape the feeling of disbelief that had settled deep within her since her lunch with Michael Jordan. The conversation, so simple yet profound, had shaken her to her core. She had always admired him from afar, but now he was offering her more than just words. He was offering her a chance. It felt surreal. A small-town girl from Mississippi, struggling to make ends meet as a waitress, now being given an opportunity to step into a world she had only dreamed about. Michael Jordan had seen something in her, and had given her the chance to turn it into something bigger than she ever imagined. The words he had spoken about potential and heart replayed in her mind over and over like a mantra, and with them came the promise of something greater. Something she didn't yet fully understand, but something that felt, for the first time in her life, like it could change everything. As the days passed and her first day on set drew closer, Denise's anxiety grew. She couldn't help but question herself. Was she ready for this? Could she really succeed in a world so far removed from everything she knew? Her nerves tangled with excitement and fear, creating an energy that buzzed beneath her skin. She had no experience in the film industry, no knowledge of script continuity or how to track every little change on set. But she had something that could not be ignored: determination. On the morning of her first day, Denise stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection as if she could will away the uncertainty in her eyes. She knew she had to show up, to give everything she had, even if she was terrified. She had come this far not by accident, but by a quiet, unrelenting belief that there had to be more for her than what she had known. That belief was all she had left, and today it would have to be enough. When she arrived on set, the enormity of it hit her immediately. The buzz of the crew moving in every direction, the hum of cameras and lights, and the organized chaos of it all. It was overwhelming. The world she had entered was nothing like the restaurant she had worked at, nothing like anything she had ever known. But in a strange way, it felt like she had found her place. The sounds of the set didn't intimidate her. They exhilarated her. The hustle and energy reminded her of the frantic rhythm of the restaurant's kitchen, except this time, she wasn't just trying to survive. This time, she was a part of something bigger. Denise was introduced to Kara, the script supervisor, who would be her guide into this world. Kara, brisk and no-nonsense, immediately began to explain the job to Denise. "It's not glamorous," she said, her voice steady and matter-of-fact, "but it's vital. You'll be keeping track of continuity, making sure that nothing changes from one shot to the next. It's attention to detail, the kind of detail that can make or break a scene." Denise nodded, trying to absorb every word. Continuity, scenes, dialogue changes. All these terms were foreign to her, but the more Kara spoke, the more Denise realized that this job was about far more than just technical skills. It was about the story. Every little detail mattered because the story depended on it. The world of film, though daunting, was rooted in the same principles she had always believed in: connection, meaning, and storytelling. As the day unfolded, Denise dove headfirst into the work. Her hands shook at first as she scribbled notes, making sure everything was in order. But with every task she completed, she grew more confident. It wasn't easy. There were moments when she felt overwhelmed, when she worried she had missed something crucial, when she feared she would mess it all up. But then, during one particularly tricky scene, she caught a small detail: a prop placement that didn't match the earlier take. Her heart skipped a beat as she spoke up, pointing out the discrepancy. Kara's eyes lit up with approval. "Good catch," Kara said, her voice warm but serious. "That's exactly the kind of thing that can slip through the cracks. You've got a sharp eye. Keep it up." Denise felt a rush of pride. It was a small moment, but it meant everything. She wasn't just keeping up, she was contributing. For the first time, she felt like she truly belonged in this world. The chaos of the set, the fast-paced work, it all felt familiar. It was challenging, yes, but it was also thrilling. She was learning and growing with every scene, every note, every correction. By the end of the week, Denise's confidence had grown exponentially. She began to anticipate potential issues before they even arose. She had found her rhythm, her place in the whirlwind of activity. And it didn't go unnoticed. Michael Jordan, who had been busy overseeing the production, stopped by to check in on her. He gave her a quick nod of approval. "You're catching on fast," he said, his voice filled with quiet respect. "I knew you had it in you." Those words stayed with Denise, fueling her determination. She was no longer the woman who had been fired for asking for an autograph. She was a part of something bigger now. She was contributing to a story that mattered, a story she could call her own. But the true test came a few days later. During a scene rehearsal, Denise made a small mistake, a prop placement issue that had the potential to throw off the entire sequence. The director was visibly frustrated, and for a moment Denise felt the sting of failure. She could feel the eyes of the crew on her, and her face burned with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," Denise muttered to Kara, her voice filled with regret. Kara's response was immediate, her tone reassuring. "Don't worry about it, everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is how you bounce back, and I can see you're already learning from this." Denise nodded, her resolve hardening. She would not let this mistake define her. She had come too far. She would not let one slip-up derail everything she had worked for. She threw herself back into the work with a renewed focus, determined to prove her. In the following days, she began to anticipate problems before they even arose, catching continuity issues before they could be missed. It became clear that Denise was not just another temporary hand on set. She was an essential part of the team. On the last day of filming, the crew gathered for a celebratory lunch. The atmosphere was light and filled with laughter, a sense of accomplishment hanging in the air. Denise sat with Kara and a few others, feeling more like a part of the group than she had ever expected. She had come so far from the anxious, overwhelmed waitress who had first stepped onto set. Then Michael approached her. He motioned for her to step aside, and Denise's heart skipped a beat. Had she done something wrong? Was this the moment when the film set would reject her? "No," Michael said, his voice calm and steady as always. "I just wanted to tell you something." Denise's pulse quickened, her throat dry with anticipation. "You've impressed me," Michael said, his words heavy with meaning. "You came in with no experience, but you held your own. That's not easy. It takes a lot of courage to walk into a world where you're the outsider and still give it everything you've got. I've seen that in you." Denise's eyes widened as he handed her an envelope. She opened it slowly, her hands trembling, and inside was a letter of recommendation, a testament to her hard work and potential. Along with it was a check, far more than she could have ever expected from this job. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered, overwhelmed by the gesture. "You don't need to thank me," Michael said with a smile. "Just don't stop. Keep going. Use this to take the next step. I know you will." As Denise stood there, staring at the letter and the check, she felt a sense of gratitude that words could hardly capture. Michael Jordan, the man who had once been just an icon on a screen, had now given her more than a chance. He had given her a belief in herself that she hadn't realized she had lost. And with that belief, Denise knew she could take whatever came next. Because this was just the beginning. Michael's recognition, a moment of gratitude and new beginnings. The last day of filming came faster than Denise had expected. The chaos of the set had become her new normal, the hectic rhythm of lights, cameras, and props blending into something she no longer feared. She had grown comfortable here, in this world she had once thought was beyond her reach. The nerves that had once gripped her when she first stepped onto the set had given way to confidence, to an understanding that she wasn't just an outsider anymore. She was a part of something meaningful. As the crew began to pack up for the day, Denise felt a quiet satisfaction settle over her. The whirlwind of learning, mistakes, triumphs, and growth was far from over, but it was already clear to her that this experience had changed her. She had learned more about the intricacies of storytelling in a week than she had in years of watching films from the comfort of her couch. But more than that, she had learned about herself, about her own strength, her own capacity to rise above every obstacle that had once seemed insurmountable. Sitting down with Kara and the other crew members during lunch, Denise finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. The tension of the past week, her initial fear of failure, her doubts about whether she belonged, had faded into the background. She felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. Like this was the path she had been meant to walk all along. And yet, the final surprise had yet to come. As the lunch carried on, filled with lighthearted conversation and shared laughter, Michael Jordan walked over to Denise's table. His presence was commanding, but not in an overbearing way. There was something calm, steady about him, a quiet confidence that made you want to listen, to hear what he had to say. Denise's stomach fluttered with anticipation. Was he here to tell her she had done something wrong, or was this simply the end of her time on the set, the end of the chapter that had opened so unexpectedly? But Michael's next words were nothing like what Denise had imagined. "Denise," he said, motioning for her to step aside. Her heart skipped a beat. She followed him to a quieter corner of the room, unsure of what to expect, but hoping, quietly, that this wouldn't be the end. "I just wanted to say something," Michael began, his voice steady and sincere. "You've impressed me more than you know. I've seen a lot of people come and go in this business, but not many have your strength. You came into this world with no experience, no idea what to expect, and you still held your own. You didn't back down, and that takes a lot of courage." Denise stood frozen, her breath catching in her chest. She had heard encouragement before, but this felt different. These weren't just words of affirmation. These were words that acknowledged her struggle, her growth, and most importantly, her potential. She had spent so much of her life questioning whether she was enough, wondering if she would ever truly break free from the life she had known, and here was Michael Jordan telling her not just that she had done well, but that she had something special. Her eyes felt warm with tears she hadn't expected. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling a surge of emotion rise in her throat. She had worked hard, so hard to get here, but she had never fully believed in herself. Not until this moment. Michael nodded, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "I want to give you this," he said, holding it out to her. Denise took the envelope, her hands trembling slightly, unsure of what was inside. When she opened it, the first thing she saw was a handwritten letter of recommendation, a testament to her hard work and growth over the past few days. But the second thing, a check, much larger than she had ever imagined, took her breath away. She stared at the check for a long moment, her mind racing. She couldn't even begin to understand the magnitude of what this gesture meant. This wasn't just a paycheck. This wasn't just a simple thank you. This was an investment in her future. Michael Jordan, the man who had been her inspiration, the man who had shaped her view of perseverance, had just given her something that felt like a lifeline. "I can't accept this," Denise said, her voice shaking with disbelief. "I didn't expect this. But Michael shook his head, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Yes, you can. This isn't charity. This is an investment. You've got talent, Denise. I see it. And I want to see you take that next step. You've got the potential to go places. But only you can make that happen." Denise's heart raced, the weight of his words sinking deep into her soul. "I've got talent." For the first time in her life, Denise wasn't just hearing praise. She was hearing a belief in her that had never come from anyone else. And it wasn't just praise. It was a belief that she could take her dreams and turn them into reality. "I don't even know how to thank you," Denise said, her voice a little hoarse from the emotions she was holding back. "This is more than I ever imagined." "You don't have to thank me," Michael replied, his voice kind but firm. "Just don't stop. Keep going. Don't let this be the end for you." Denise nodded, her chest tight with gratitude. As Michael walked away, she stood there for a moment, unable to move, overwhelmed by the weight of the letter, the check, and the belief he had just instilled in her. This wasn't just about getting a job or being part of a project. This was about someone who had seen her for who she truly was, someone who had seen her potential when she hadn't even known it was there. In that moment, Denise felt something shift deep inside her. She was no longer the person who had been fired for asking for an autograph. She was no longer the person who had doubted herself, who had struggled to believe she could ever be more than what she was. Michael had given her more than an opportunity. He had given her the belief that she could achieve anything she set her mind to, that she could take the raw potential inside her and transform it into something meaningful. As she walked off the set for the last time, the sun shining down on her face, Denise felt a sense of clarity she had never known. She wasn't just walking away from a set. She was walking toward her future, toward a life she had always dreamed of, but never thought she could have. And with every step she took, she knew that this was just the beginning. She had found her path, she had found her strength, and now there was nothing that could stop her. The challenge, overcoming self-doubt and proving her worth. As the days passed and Denise settled into her new role on the set, the initial excitement and euphoria slowly began to give way to the hard work of proving herself. She had received the gift of opportunity, an offer from Michael Jordan himself to join the production team. But now came the harder part, making sure that the promise of potential would turn into real, tangible results. The weight of her inexperience was something she couldn't ignore. No matter how much she tried to push it aside, there was a voice in the back of her mind constantly reminding her that she didn't belong here. It whispered to her in the quiet moments when she was alone, in the corner, jotting down notes, trying to learn the technical aspects of continuity and scene tracking. The world of film was an intricate one, filled with terms and expectations she had never encountered before. Every mistake felt like a failure, every task a reminder of how much she still had to learn. The pressure grew as she spent long hours on set, watching experienced crew members glide through their tasks with ease, while she stumbled through hers. The hours felt endless, and the fear of making a major mistake was suffocating. She would find herself replaying every conversation, every instruction, every moment when she felt out of place. "Am I really cut out for this?" she asked herself in the silence of her thoughts. "What if I let everyone down? What if Michael made a mistake in trusting me?" One morning, during a particularly demanding scene, Denise found herself in a near panic. A crucial prop had been misplaced, and the entire scene was in jeopardy of being ruined. The director was becoming frustrated, and her heart raced as she desperately scanned the set for the missing piece. Her mind went blank for a moment, the weight of the task and the expectations pressing down on her shoulders. The quiet whispers of self-doubt grew louder. "This is it. I've messed up. I can't do this. I'm not good enough." But then, something shifted inside her. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for just a moment, and thought back to the words Michael had spoken to her that day at lunch. "You've got heart. You've got grit." Those words anchored her. With newfound determination, Denise hurried over to the prop table and scanned it again, and there it was. The missing item was nestled underneath a stack of other items, unnoticed by everyone else. She felt a wave of relief wash over her as she quickly returned the prop to its proper place, getting the scene back on track. The director's frustration faded and the crew moved on, but Denise stood there for a moment, catching her breath, her heart still pounding. That small victory, finding the missing prop, felt like a triumph. It wasn't just about salvaging the scene, it was about something deeper. It was about proving to herself that she could overcome her fears and doubts. It was about facing the challenge head-on and emerging stronger. Denise had taken a step forward in her journey, not just as a member of the team, but as someone who was learning to trust herself, even when the fear of failure seemed overwhelming. The following days were filled with more challenges, but each one built on the last. Every mistake became a lesson, every moment of uncertainty an opportunity to grow. Denise began to recognize her own progress. How much more confident she was when tracking continuity, how much faster she could spot issues before they became problems, and how her initial hesitation had transformed into a quiet confidence. She wasn't just learning the ropes of the film industry, she was learning to believe in her ability to handle anything that came her way. But it wasn't easy. There were still days when the doubt crept in, when the weight of her inexperience threatened to pull her back down. There were moments when she questioned whether Michael had made a mistake in giving her this opportunity. But those moments were fewer now. She had learned to recognize them for what they were. Temporary setbacks, not permanent failures. On one of the last days of filming, Denise was tasked with keeping track of a complex sequence of scenes. The actors moved through multiple locations, and it was up to her to ensure the dialogue and props matched up from one shot to the next. It was an enormous responsibility, one that had her nerves on edge. But as she worked, something unexpected happened. She began to feel in control. She had learned the systems, the nuances, and the flow of the set. She could anticipate the needs of the crew, stay ahead of the director's requests, and manage the smallest details with confidence. When the scene wrapped, Michael Jordan walked over to her, as he often did during the day, to check in. He gave her a brief nod of approval, and then he said something that took her breath away. "You've come a long way, Denise," he said. "I knew you had it in you. You've earned your place here. I'm proud of you." Those words, simple, direct, and sincere, were everything to Denise. They didn't just acknowledge her hard work on set. They acknowledged the woman she was becoming. She had faced the doubts, the mistakes, and the struggles, and had risen above them. The quiet voice of insecurity that had once been so loud inside her had been silenced by the steady rhythm of progress, the consistent belief in her own abilities, and the unwavering support from someone who had seen potential in her when she couldn't see it herself. The challenge wasn't just about surviving in the fast-paced world of film production. It was about learning to trust herself, to embrace her worth, and to stop doubting the path she was on. Denise had made it, and now she could finally see herself as more than just the waitress who had asked for an autograph. She was a woman who had learned to stand tall in a world that had once seemed too big for her, a woman who had found her place and her confidence in a world of possibility. The acknowledgement, embracing her growth and future. As the final days of filming came and went, Denise found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. What had started as a fleeting moment of awe when she nervously asked Michael Jordan for an autograph had transformed into something far more significant. It had become a story of growth, of challenge, and most importantly, of self-discovery. Each day on set had pushed her further than she had ever imagined. The tasks that once felt insurmountable had become routine. The moments of doubt that had plagued her during those first few days had been replaced by a quiet confidence that seemed to grow stronger with every passing hour. She was no longer the unsure woman who had been afraid to ask for an autograph. She was a woman who had earned the respect of her colleagues, who had fought through her own insecurities, and who had proven to herself that she was capable of so much more than she had ever believed. But even as Denise felt the weight of her accomplishments, she couldn't escape the awareness that the journey was far from over. She had learned a great deal about the film industry, but more than that, she had learned about herself, about her strength, her resilience, and her ability to overcome the obstacles life had thrown her way. What mattered now, more than anything else, was how she would move forward from here. It was a late afternoon when Michael Jordan approached her on set one final time. The crew had wrapped for the day, and the soft hum of conversation and equipment being packed away filled the air. Denise was sitting at a quiet corner of the set, sipping a cup of water, when she saw him walking toward her. He was still as steady, as composed as ever, but there was something different in his expression this time. A quiet pride that seemed to emanate from him. He stopped in front of her, offering a brief nod of acknowledgement. "Denise," he said, his voice carrying that familiar weight of quiet confidence, "I just wanted to take a moment to say something." Denise looked up at him, feeling a surge of gratitude rush through her. She had been anticipating this moment, knowing it would come at some point, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure what to expect. What could he say after all the words of encouragement he had already given her? Had she truly lived up to the potential he had seen in her? "You've come a long way," Michael said, his gaze meeting hers with unwavering sincerity. "When I first met you, you were hesitant, unsure of yourself. And now, you're standing here as a vital part of this team. You've earned your place." Denise felt her chest tighten, not with anxiety, but with a deep, overwhelming sense of pride. She had come to know what those words meant. Earned. She hadn't been handed this opportunity, she had fought for it. She had made mistakes, had fallen short in ways she couldn't count, but each time she had risen again. Each time she had found the strength to keep moving forward. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She didn't know if she could ever fully express the gratitude she felt for this moment, for this experience that had reshaped her life in ways she couldn't yet fully understand. But Michael wasn't finished. "I know this wasn't easy for you," he continued, his voice steady but filled with warmth. "You've faced a lot of obstacles, and I've watched you work through every single one of them. It's not just your skills on set that I admire. It's your heart, your determination. You've grown, Denise, and that's something you should never forget." His words struck a chord deep within her. For so long she had believed that her value was tied to external measures, her ability to land a job, to prove herself, to be accepted by others. She had spent so much time feeling like an outsider, trying to force herself to fit into molds she didn't even understand. But here, in this moment, she realized that the growth Michael was speaking of had nothing to do with fitting into a mold. It had everything to do with embracing who she was, with honoring her journey and all the progress she had made. Michael took a step back, his gaze never leaving hers. "I want you to know that this isn't the end for you. You've got a bright future ahead, and I believe in it. This was just the beginning. Don't forget that." For the first time in her life, Denise felt truly seen. She had spent so many years feeling invisible, unsure of her worth, wondering if her efforts would ever amount to anything. But in this moment, with Michael Jordan's words ringing in her ears, she realized that she had already proven to herself that she was worthy of growth, worthy of the opportunities that lay ahead, worthy of believing in herself. As the crew began to gather their things and prepare for the end of the day, Denise stood still, letting the weight of Michael's words settle into her heart. She had come to understand that true growth wasn't about reaching a particular destination. It was about embracing the journey, learning from the struggles, and finding strength in the moments when everything seemed impossible. And as she walked away from the set, her heart light and full of purpose, Denise knew that this was just the beginning. The lessons she had learned, the obstacles she had overcome, and the belief in herself that she had finally embraced, these would carry her through whatever came next. There would be more challenges ahead, more opportunities to grow, but she no longer feared them. She was ready. The new path, stepping into the future with confidence. As Denise left the set for the last time, she couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental had shifted within her. The journey that had begun with a simple, nerve-wracking request for an autograph had morphed into something far greater than she could have ever imagined. Each moment, each lesson learned, had brought her closer to a version of herself she hadn't known existed. Someone strong, capable, and unafraid of what the future might hold. It wasn't just the professional growth that had surprised her, although that was undeniable. The way she had learned to navigate the technical demands of the film industry, the way she had earned the respect of her colleagues. It was all incredible. But what had truly transformed her was something deeper, something more personal. It was the quiet, steady realization that she had the power to change her own life, that her worth didn't come from external validation or recognition, but from the quiet belief she had finally found within herself. As Denise stood on the sidewalk outside the studio, the last traces of sunlight casting long shadows on the pavement, she took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the cool evening air. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for, even though she hadn't known she was waiting for it. She had learned to take risks, to trust in her own strength, and to step into the unknown with the confidence that she could handle whatever came her way. For so long, Denise had carried the weight of self-doubt, questioning whether she was worthy of anything more than what she had. But now, standing at the threshold of her future, she knew that the only thing holding her back was herself. She had been given the tools, the knowledge, and the belief in herself to take whatever steps she chose from here on out. She wasn't just waiting for the world to open doors for her anymore. She was ready to open them herself. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, interrupting her thoughts. She pulled it out and saw a message from her roommate. "How was your last day? I'm so proud of you." A small smile tugged at Denise's lips. She had come so far, so much farther than she had ever imagined when she first stepped foot in Los Angeles. Back then, her dreams had felt distant, almost impossible to reach. Now, they felt within arm's reach, ready to be grasped. She thought about Michael's words, about how he had seen her heart, her grit. It wasn't just the technical skills she had developed on the set that mattered, though they were important. It was the way she had allowed herself to grow, Denise knew the path ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be more challenges, more doubts to face, more moments when the world seemed to be telling her she wasn't enough. But now she understood that those moments didn't define her. It was her response to them, her ability to keep going, that truly mattered. As she walked toward her car, ready to leave the studio behind and head into the next phase of her life, Denise realized something profound. She was no longer the same person who had stood there asking for an autograph. She had become someone who took ownership of her journey, someone who believed in the possibility of her dreams, and most importantly, someone who knew that her future was in her own hands. And as she drove away, heading toward whatever came next, Denise felt the quiet, powerful certainty that she was ready for it. No longer bound by fear or doubt, she embraced the unknown with a heart full of hope, a mind clear with purpose, and the confidence that she could handle whatever challenges lay ahead. The story of Denise Carter was just beginning, and she couldn't wait to see where it would take her next. As Denise drove away, filled with newfound purpose and excitement, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. If you've been inspired by Denise's story of perseverance, growth, and transformation, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you believe that determination can turn any challenge into an opportunity, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community. Don't miss out on more stories that inspire change and spark courage. We'd also love to hear your own stories of growth and overcoming obstacles. Drop a comment below and share your journey with us. Let's support each other and continue growing together. Your story matters, and we're here to listen. Subscribe now and be part of a movement that believes in strength, resilience, and the power of believing in yourself. See you in the next video.